Hello colleagues, welcome to the Pro Quality. And before we start our event, I want to remind you to join us on our community platform and our social media. Put your likes, thumbs ups and hearts to support us and our speaker. I will post useful links for you a little bit later, and also don't hesitate to ask your questions during the event using the chat, and in the end of speech I will address the most interesting question to our speaker. So now let's start. I'm glad to introduce Harsha, who will share with us a lot of interesting information about WebDriver BIDI. Harsha, welcome, and stage is yours.
Thank you, Andre. Thank you for the introduction. Hello everyone. Thank you for joining the Pro Quality Talk on WebDriver BIDI. So today I'll be introducing you to the WebDriver BIDI, a new browser automation protocol, which is also a bidirectional protocol. So it is also an extension for the previous existing WebDriver protocol also. So today we will be discussing about why WebDriver BIDI was came into the picture and what were the limitations with the WebDriver Classic or and also with the CDP. So and also we will be seeing about how we can use WebDriver BIDI in our automation scripts using in the Selenium or WebDriverIO. So coming to me, for the people who don't know me, hello everyone. My name is Harsha. I'm working as senior test automation engineer here at EPAM Systems, and apart from that, I'll be also I'm open source enthusiast and contributing to the open source project like Selenium and WebDriverIO, and currently serving as Selenium technical leadership committee member also. Yep. So, coming to the agenda, first, what we'll do is we'll discuss about the evolution of WebDriver Classic. So, you all know, WebDriver is something which was invented or created in the year of 2005, right? So, it has been more than 18 years of journey with the WebDriver, and we will be seeing like evolution of WebDriver Classic now. And later, what we'll do is we will compare WebDriver Classic with the Chrome DevTools Protocol. So in the recent years, Chrome DevTools Protocol has been a hype, and it has taken a good place in the automation industry. And later we'll discuss about the WebDriver BIDI, because once you get a fully understanding of WebDriver Classic and the CDP, it is more easy to understand why WebDriver BIDI came into the picture. Okay, and later we will also look into the advantages with the WebDriver BIDI and the current BIDI state. So WebDriver BIDI is still in development progress from the browser vendors, but we will see how far it is implemented and how much we can use it in our automation scripts. And we will also be seeing the implementation with Selenium and WebDriver tools, so that I'll be executing few scripts and showing you how WebDriver BIDI works with our in our scripts. So coming to the history of WebDriver Classic, all know Selenium RC, the first automation tool, which was introduced in 2004, right? So Selenium RC, how it worked is it's simple. So Selenium actually installs a remote control server in the browser machines. So it executes the command. It sends to the command to a JavaScript engine called Selenium Core, and Selenium Core, which resides in the browser engine, uses it to execute that commands. Selenium RC was quite popular, but it has a bit of disadvantages because of its complexity, architecture, and the API was not pure object oriented. And later, when Simon Stewart introduced Selenium WebDriver protocol in 2005, so it was communicating via JSON Web Protocol, WebDriver API. And in the year of 2009, what happened? Selenium and WebDriver was merged and made into a tool, a new tool called Selenium WebDriver. And Selenium WebDriver was communicating to browsers via JSON Web Protocol until 2009. So it was the same until 2018, when the WebDriver was made as a standard specification by the W3C. So standard specification in the sense, now Web Selenium or WebDriver now communicates with the browsers with W3C protocol, not with the JSON Web Protocol. So if you see the Selenium 4 and other tools which uses WebDriver protocol, so they communicate using W3C protocol. So this protocol was introduced for the consistency and stability of the test cases when they are using WebDriver. So this is one side of history about the WebDriver Classic. So first RC, second WebDriver, later Selenium WebDriver, and later it was made as a specification. It was fine until, but th- there are the tools we have a lot of automation tools in the market right now. So we will discuss about the few tools that uses WebDriver Classic in the backend. So first one, the Selenium is the most popular tool and used by a lot of people, and it is the pure implementation of the WebDriver protocol, right? So the second tool in the market is the WebDriverIO. So WebDriverIO is one of the tool which is developed in JavaScript and TypeScript. So it also uses pure WebDriver Classic API in the backend. So it uses the same WebDriver protocol to communicate with the browser. And the third tool is the APM. So APM is the open source tool which is used to test mobile applications, and APM also uses WebDriver Classic API in the backend. And the fourth popular tool is Nightwatch.js. So Nightwatch.js is an independent tool, but which is built on top of Selenium only. So Nightwatch.js uses Selenium WebDriver in the backend to communicate with the browser using the WebDriver protocol. So these are the four important tools in the market which uses pure WebDriver Classic implementation. And there are a lot of other tools in the market which uses WebDriver Classic, such as Catalan, Selenium base, these tools. So if you take one example with the Catalan uses the Selenium jar file in the backend, but it still communicates via WebDriver protocol to the browser. So this is one side of history of the WebDriver Classic tools, and we will see about the Web API automation tools. So in the market currently, there is one tool which uses Web API, the JavaScript API or the jQuery in the backend to simulate automation in the browser. So that is the Cypress. So Cypress strictly uses Web API tool and it does not use this WebDriver API. So that's why Cypress directly injects commands into the browser for the automation purpose. So let us see how Cypress or the Web API is different from the WebDriver Classic if with a click action. So for example, I have a button in here called click me. So what I'll do is I will explain how WebDriver Classic implements the click action and how Cypress implements the click action on this button. So if I'm trying with the WebDriver Classic, what happens is first WebDriver Classic identifies the element and it moves the cursor or the mouse event. It injects the mouse event and it onto the button, and it performs the click action on the button. So this is how WebDriver Classic actually clicks a button. So first it identifies the element, moves the cursor and performs the click action. But when you take the Cypress tool, it does not do the click action in the same way. So Cypress, what it does instead, it adds an event listener in the backend for that button, and it simulates that event listener for the button. That's why there is a lot of difference between using the WebDriver Classic and the Cypress tool. For example, in the WebDriver Classic, if a button is not visible on the page, you cannot actually click on it, right? But with Cypress, if the button, irrespective of this, it is displayed or it is visible, you can directly simulate the click action by adding the event listener to the button in the DevTools console. So this is how Cypress works, the Web API works, and WebDriver Classic works. But there is one more tool called Chrome DevTools Protocol, which is used for the automation purpose. And there are two great tools that uses Chrome DevTools Protocol, like Playwright and Puppeteer. So Playwright and Puppeteer are strictly tools which uses CDP protocol, so Chrome DevTools Protocol. Okay, so now let us see the same how Chrome DevTools Protocol simulates the click action on the same button. So again, if I have the click me button in here, so assume WebDriver Classic, what it does, it moves the mouse cursor and performs the click action, right? But via CDP, it is not the same. So when you're using CDP, what it does is it performs three queries in the backend. Those three queries are: first one, dom dot perform search. For example, it performs a search operation to identify the element. Okay, and the second thing is it uses a query selector to select the element, and the third event is it dispatches the event. Here it dispatches the click event to simulate click action on that button. So there is a lot more difference, whenever if you take one tool, how the tool acts to perform an action is different from WebDriver Classic, CDP, and Web API. Okay, so but there are currently the two great tools are WebDriver Classic and CDP. But we will see how WebDriver Classic and CDP are different now in four ways. So first one is WebDriver Classic is a standard tool. So as I said, WebDriver Classic is made by WWDC specification. It is a standard. And whereas CDP is only supports for the Chromium based browser. So CDP, if you see Chrome DevTools Protocol, which is strictly defined to only Chromium browsers. Okay, and the second thing is WebDriver Classic communicates via HTTP request. So everyone know that Selenium actually starts a server in the backend HTTP server, and it sends the commands to the browser or the browser driver, right? And browser driver carries that instructions to the browser. So the communication happens via HTTP request. So what happens is there are few limitations with the HTTP request. Uh, two main limitations are HTTP requests are unidirectional, and HTTP requests are synchronous. Whereas CDP, if you take CDP communicates via WebSocket. So whenever you start a WebSocket connection, connections are bidirectional actually. So WebSocket connection has the power to send the commands, and also those can listen to the events or messages from the server, right? And that's why CDP is more powerful when you're operating on the DevTools console, low-level API or low-level controls of the DevTools. Coming to the third point, WebDriver Classic has no support for the low level controls. If you all know WebDriver API or the Selenium or WebDriverIO tools, you can only perform operations on the browser UI, but you cannot perform operations on the DevTools console, browser consoles, right? So you cannot access network requests, or you cannot access console things, errors, or whatever the events that happens in the DevTools. But if you see other side of the CDP, CDP is rich in accessing the DevTools of a browser. So it can actually get the messages from the console, get the errors from the console. You can mock the network request, or network interception, or you can wait until the DOM changes. So this is the power of CDP actually. Okay, so these are all the difference between the WebDriver Classic and the CDP. But now we will see the limitations of the WebDriver Classic. So the limitations are most important. That helps you to understand why WebDriver BIDI came into the picture. Okay, so first one is a synchronous in nature. So as I said, WebDriver Classic sends the HTTP request to the browser. It is synchronous. Synchronous in the sense, for example, if you want to click a button, what you do first, you need to understand if the button is enabled and the button is clickable, and later you perform the click action. So in order to do that, what WebDriver does is it sends three requests synchronously one by one in order to make sure that is visible, clickable, and perform click action. So due to this synchronous, what happens is WebDriver actually waits until that operation is processed at the server side. Okay, so due to the synchronous nature, there is a performance issue in the WebDriver. And second thing is the limitation, WebDriver does not have access to the low level controls. So if you see, you cannot perform DevTools actions using WebDriver like network interception, DOM inspection, and you cannot listen to console interaction. So this is one limitation. And the second thing is WebDrivers is unidirectional. As I said, WebDriver can is synchronous and it is not bidirectional. That means you can send the request, and that request messages will be received later, but you cannot know actually what's happening at the server side or the browser side. Okay, it actually lacks in the bidirectional communication. Okay, so these are all the WebDriver limitations. Now we will go with the CDP limitations. CDP has core main two limitations. First one is browser compatibility, because CDP stands for Chrome DevTools Protocol. That means the CDP is only limited to Chromium browsers or Chromium based browsers, I can say. That is Chromium, Chrome, and Edge Chromium. So CDP is full supported to Chromium browsers and less supported to the other browsers like Safari and Firefox. So it is not browser compatible. Second one is the version dependency. So for every release of Google Chrome, there will be a new release of CDP version. So for each release, there will be few things deprecated and few things will be added, right? So certain features are not backward compatible when you are using CDP. That means if you are writing test script for one browser version, it may not work for the previous browser version, and also for the future browser version. So you cannot guarantee it. So CDP is strictly version dependent. So these are the actual limitations with the WebDriver Classic and the CDP. So now we have seen WebDriver Classic limitations, that it cannot have access to the low-level controls and it is a unidirectional. And CDP has access to the DevTools, but it is version dependent and it does not support cross-browser. So what Chromium team did is, why can't we merge both tools and make one more protocol so that it can have the power of WebDriver and also the power of CDP, right? So that's it more interesting, right? So that's why WebDriver BIDI came into the picture. So WebDriver BIDI actually is a combination of WebDriver Classic and the power of CDP. So here, WebDriver BIDI is not a new protocol, like, it is not created entirely new. It is an existing protocol developed over WebDriver, I can say. So still, WebDriver Classic works, and also it gives you the power of CDP in the WebDriver BIDI. Okay, yep. So coming to the advantages of WebDriver BIDI. So it is far okay now. WebDriver BIDI was introduced, and how it is going to, like, how we can take advantage of WebDriver BIDI in the automation scripts. First one is, when you use WebDriver BiDi, your request will be fast and your request will be bidirectional. That means your automation script will be more faster than previous implementation, because WebDriver BiDi communicates via bidirectional, and you can actually understand what is happening at the browser side instead of sending the synchronous requests. Okay, so second thing, WebDriver BiDi will have access to the low level control. So even you are using WebDriver Classic in the scripts, you can still have access to the dev tools, and you can listen to JS exceptions, console logs, and you can mock test data, and you can intercept the network requests, and you can do everything with the WebDriver BiDi along with the WebDriver Classic. Third one is cross-browser support. So WebDriver BiDi is going to be a W3C specification. So this will be not a individual stable implementation like CDP. So that what happens is, every browser vendor will implement the WebDriver BiDi API. So now every action you do or you perform using the WebDriver BiDi will be same in all the browsers. And fourth one is the main thing. It is a W3C standard compliance. That means WebDriver is not decided or maintained by one organization. It is a W3C standard. So every browser vendor has to implement the same API, so that again, every action you perform with the WebDriver BiDi will be the same action in all the browsers. So these are the main four advantages of the WebDriver BiDi. So WebDriver BiDi can also help you to get the performance, inject scripts and everything, like, the power of DevTools you will have with the WebDriver BiDi. So we were speaking about the low level controls for now, but what are the main low level controls or the top low level controls that WebDriver BiDi can provide? First one is the listening to the JS errors. So if you have rich feature JavaScript application that has that throws an error at some point in your automation, you can listen those errors with WebDriver BiDi, and you can you can debug them to fix your issue. And second thing is listening to the console logs. So not only the JS errors, you can also listen to the console logs that been logged into your in browser console in the application, and you can fetch the logs for the debugging purpose. And third one is the DOM mutation. DOM mutation, in the sense, WebDriver BiDi can help you to monitor the DOM structure, the DOM tree, and it can trigger event whenever you want to inject any script there. And fourth one is the network interception. WebDriver BiDi can actually help you to listen to the incoming networks for the browser, and it also helps you to intercept it. So these are the main four features that WebDriver BiDi provides. And other than this, we can also do lot many. You can use the browsing context, and you can inject scripts into the using the WebDriver BiDi. So whatever the low-level controls or the dev tools you want to perform, you can do with the WebDriver BiDi. So coming to the current implementation status, so WebDriver BiDi is not fully implemented yet. It is still in development, but it is under development from the past 2 years, and there are a lot of features which are already implemented. So if I see here, the core modules are the browsing context, errors, input, log, and network, script, and session. So session is a basic module where you can start the BIDI session, and script is one module where you can inject JavaScript code in using WebDriver BIDI. So network module is where you can perform the network interception, and log is where you can actually read the logs, that may be the console logs or the JS logs. And the input events are like submitting the forms and everything. So whatever the keyboard actions you perform, so those are the input events that WebDriver BIDI supports. And errors and browsing context. So this is one high level. If I open one, then you will understand like what is a browsing context, like capturing screenshot, opening a new browser, closing it, creating a new tab, or like creating a new window, and navigating to a URL, printing the pages, or saving the PDF, and everything, those are handled in the browsing context. So there is one high level module, and that has submodules implemented. And this sheet, what it does is, the green shows the implementation level, and the red shows the it is not yet implemented. So what are these numbers? Are simple. These are the test cases that browser vendor uses in order to test their PyDI feature. So we call this as a web platform test cases. So these web platform test cases used by browser vendors in order to make sure that their implementation is working in all other browsers. So WebDriver BIDI is still in progress, but there are few features already available in the Selenium and WebDriverIO, so we'll be looking into them. So first one is with the Selenium. Okay, so if you see, Selenium is already implementing the WebDriver BIDI in the backend. So we have it released from 4.4 and between 4.6, and you can use WebDriver BIDI to in order to listen to console console logs and the JS exceptions in here. So for example, if I take the sample code, this is the Selenium code working example. So how we can enable the WebDriver BIDI and how we can use it in the scripts, I will show you. So first, we have provided an option called Enable BIDI for the browser options. Like we have Firefox and Chrome and Edge Chromium. Safari is not yet implemented with the WebDriver BIDI, but you can enable WebDriver BIDI in the Chrome and Firefox using a browser option called Enable BIDI. Okay, so when you do this, when you enable BIDI, what happens in the backend? Selenium actually starts a WebSocket connection along with the WebDriver connection. Okay, so second thing, what I'm doing, once I enable the option, I'm starting the driver instance with that option so that it opens the WebSocket and the driver connection. And later, what I'll do is, I'll just start the event to listen to the log events and pass by passing the driver instance. And here, using the execute script, what I'm doing is, I'm just injecting a console log in the browser console that prints hello BIDI, and when that the console is injected in the DevTools, automatically my inspector will be reading the loggers from the DevTools console. So I'll be also showing the demo, but this is one implementation of the Selenium to listen to the log events using the WebDriver BIDI. Okay, so the second thing, I'll also be showing the demo with the WebDriver IO. So even WebDriver IO actually supports WebDriver BIDI implementation, and unlike Selenium, WebDriver IO has a different kind of implementation of the WebDriver BIDI. So here we can directly import WebDriver, that is from the WebDriver IO package, and using that WebDriver, you can start the WebDriver BIDI connection using a code called WebSocket URL. So WebSocket URL is a new capability that is passed from the browser vendors in order to start, or in order to stop the BIDI connection. Whenever you set to true, then your session will be all your session will be started with the WebSocket connection, and it gives the BIDI connection to your existing session. Okay, so once we use this capability in order to start the WebDriver BIDI connection, then in WebDriver IO, what they have provided is the browser.session subscribe. So session subscribe is nothing but we are subscribing to an event that is called log.entryAdded. So log.entryAdded is the BIDI command where it actually starts listening to the console logs or the JS logs. So once we subscribe to the session or the subscribe to the log event, then we are again executing the script which actually executes an error in here. So instead of log, I'm just trying to throw an error like console.error, sample log error. So it will be printed in the DevTools console only. And again, when the event is triggered, when the log is printed in the console, now I'm trying to fetch it and use it for my debugging purposes. So this is another example with the WebDriver IO, and that is one example with the Selenium. So if you see in the Selenium, actually we have made more simpler for you in order to start the session, and also in order to register for the log entry events. But in the WebDriver IO, it is a different implementation, and you have to actually pass the event name in here, the log entry dot added in here. So it will be similar for network events or browsing context or to inject the scripts. So it will be a different thing. So currently now what I'll do is I'll switch to the IDE part where I can show you the demo with the Selenium and also with the WebDriver IO. So coming to the Selenium, this is the same script I've shown you, right? So what I'm doing here, I'm enabling the BIDI in here, okay, and I'm passing that option in here and starting the driver instance. And later what I'm doing, I'm registering for the log inspector, for registering for the to listen for the log events. And here I'm just hitting the URL. This does nothing. And in the 15th 15th line mainly, here using the execute script, what I'm doing is I'm actually triggering a console log event that prints hello BIDI in the DevTools console. Now when it actually executes that script, my inspector, what it does, it actually listens to that log event, trigger event, and it fetches it for you. Okay, so I'll just print it out, or I'll execute it out. Npm run sc is my command name that actually starts the Selenium server. Say, so it is executing the code, and now if you see in the output what I have printed using the console.log, it says there is a console log entry which is level info text hello BIDI and the timestamp stack trace, and it is also a type console, or you can see console or JavaScript. So method is the log, which is not an error because we have 5 types of consoles in here: console, debug, log, error kind of thing. So it also gives the complete arguments that it has printed in the console. So what now I'll do is I'll just pass the browser for 1 minute, and I'll show you what is actually happening in the backend. So I'll run the test again. The automation window opens. So here, if I open and inspect the console, you can see there is a message called hello BIDI. So this is the event that I have triggered using the execute script that actually printing the console log in my automation window, like an automation console window. So using WebDriver BIDI, what I'm doing, I'm actually fetching this text from the console. So this is the power of WebDriver BIDI. You can actually have the access to DevTools now, and you can access whatever you want, errors or JS exceptions or whatever it is, console loss, etc. So here, what happening is when you open or when you start a BIDI session in Chrome, there will be another window, a default window called WebDriver BIDI mapper. So that gives the information or the complete information on how BIDI is sending or receiving the event request from the Selenium. Okay, so now if you say these are the BIDI messages, it says BIDI session is launched and it is subscribing for the log events. I'll just show you again. So the BIDI session says here it has, sorry, my bad. Let the event get triggered and we will capture the message using BIDI and we'll later open the BIDI mapper. Okay, yeah. Here now WebDriver BIDI is launched and we are subscribing to the log.entry added using session.subscribe. This is the same thing you have seen with the WebDriver IO, but it is now managed automatically using Selenium. But in WebDriver IO, you need to place the event name there, and it actually capturing that whatever the event you type the console error, it actually fetches it for you automatically, because it constantly listens for the console events, and it captures the last triggered event. So this is the BIDI mapper that only you can see in the Chromium window. First thing, you cannot actually close this BIDI mapper. Closing this BIDI mapper will actually close the WebSocket connection. And second thing, as I did before, refreshing it is also closes the BIDI mapper. So you should not disturb this window, automation window, during your execution whenever you enable BIDI. So this is one suggestion for the people who are using BIDI. So this is because the Chromium team actually wants to show you what commands you are sending using the WebDriver BIDI, but later in the future maybe they will remove that mapper window, but currently it helps you to see what commands you are sending. Okay, so this is the automation thing with the Selenium, and later we'll move, now we'll move to the WebDriver IO. So WebDriver IO also supports BIDI. Again, same as I said, you have to actually mention the event name in the WebDriver IO when you're starting the session. And you have to make sure you manually place WebSocket URL to true in order to start the BIDI session. Placing it false, what happens? The automation window opens, but it assumes that you are not using the WebDriver BIDI, you are using the regular WebDriver Classic. Okay, so here what I'll do is I have a URL in here where it can actually this is in this URL you have 4 events that we have used for testing. So if I click on any one of the button, what happens is it just gives me the respective operation, for console logs, for console errors, for JS exception, and JS exception with an stack trace. So here I'm trying to go with the JS exception. So when I click on this button, what happens is there will be an exception logged in the console, like uncaught error not working. So I want to capture this error using the BIDI. So the same thing I'm using with the WebDriver IO, the same concept. First, I'm registering for the log events, and later hitting the URL and clicking on the JS exception. And this is how WebDriver IO works, that you have to pass the element ID in here. This is the from the WebDriver actually. And later, whenever there is a message like exception, I'm just trying to capture that exception and printing it in here. And later I'm just deleting the session. So when I execute, you can see it has started the BIDI session, stopped it already. But if you see the message in here, the WebDriver IO actually gives you more in detail information in here. Unlike Selenium, it actually gives the received information, the exact received information from the WebDriver BIDI. So you can see the method, params, context, realm ID, stack trace, and column numbers, and everything that is received from the uh, WebDriver BIDI. So the text here you can see error not working. So this is the same error that we have seen in the browser window. So WebDriver IO helps you to fetch that error, JS error. So this is how you can use WebDriver BIDI for now to get the log events, or to get the JS exceptions, to move in between the browser context and to inject the script. Okay, so everything is fine. So what actually WebDriver BIDI is using now? So how it is different from the WebDriver Classic and the CDP? So now we can see I'm automating using a Selenium WebDriver in between. I have also started WebDriver BIDI session. I'm trying to access DevTools console with the Selenium script. So this is how WebDriver BIDI provides new features to the existing WebDriver Classic. Okay, so if you don't enable BIDI, then you won't see any automation window or the BIDI mapper. What I'll do is I'll just comment it out and I'll just try to execute it. Now you see the automation window, there is only one tab opened. That means we are not starting a BIDI session in here. We are just opening, going with the normal WebDriver Classic. So the entire session with Selenium now acts as a WebDriver Classic, not with the BIDI. Whenever you enable BIDI, then it gives the power to the power of DevTools to your WebDriver Classic. So this is how WebDriver BIDI helps you to debug more in the fetch exceptions and intercept networks in using the WebDriver Classic. So it will help you for more debugging purpose. So back to the presentation again. So what are the actual goals of WebDriver BIDI? So everything is fine. They have implemented so far, but what they are going to what they are going to implement in the future is below. The main goals are notifying the new context. So new context in the sense it is a browser context or the window context, that if you open a new browser like a new window or new tab, so WebDriver BIDI can actually notify you. Listen to the JS errors. Now we have seen we are able to actually listen to the JS errors that are logged on the console and listen to the console errors and the logs. In the first Selenium script, you have seen that we can actually listen to the console logs using WebDriver BIDI. So bootstrapping scripts in the sense, using WebDriver BIDI, you can inject scripts into the console, but it is still in progress. So the green checks notify you that these are the features that are already implemented, and in progress are the bootstrap scripts, and mocking the backend and the network intercepts network requests. Intercepting the network request is in still progress. They are still testing it. And the future the goals are providing the full on the input actions. So whatever the keyboard actions you perform or the mouse actions you perform with the WebDriver BIDI, you can actually get those event triggered events. And access to the native DevTools protocol. So it is implemented, you can say, but the thing is, accessing the complete DevTools is different from browser to browser. So it is still fully not implemented, but they have planned to implement complete DevTools access to the WebDriver BIDI. And dynamic changes to iframes or documents. So if there are any changes, dynamic changes, DOM events DOM mutation, tree changes in the backend, WebDriver BIDI can actually see those and it can inform you. And performance timing. So this is one more main feature that everyone is saying, they want to actually calculate their application performance, right? So with WebDriver BIDI, you can also fetch the performance timings of your application. So this is all about the WebDriver BIDI, a new browser automation protocol. It's a bidirectional, same as the CDP, and the power of CDP to the WebDriver Classic. So here I'll be closing my talk and going for the questions. Over to you, Andre.
Thank you for that amazing presentation. I think that a lot of attendees of our events just start Googling what is WebDriver BIDI, how to download it, and to start to use it. But I think that you open this door for some of our participants. And let's go to the section with the questions. Yeah, and the first questions that I see, what programming language are supported?
Okay, so in Selenium, if you take Selenium, WebDriver BIDI is supported in 5 different languages like JavaScript, Java, Python, Ruby, and .NET. And if you take WebDriverIO, it is supported in both JavaScript and TypeScript. So these are the only 2 tools currently implemented the WebDriver BIDI. So only these languages so far.
Great. Next question. Does WebDriver BIDI solve the issue of flaky and outright not working test in Safari?
Yeah, so I'll take this question in 2 ways. So resolving the flakiness in the test cases, I recommend we can go with the Selenium or the WebDriver protocol, WPC protocol. So because I'm not saying that WebDriver cannot resolve it. The Safari team hasn't implemented the WebDriver BIDI yet, so we need to still wait until the Safari team implements. But in order to resolve flakiness, we can still use Selenium for WPC protocol, which is more stable.
Great, great. Next question. Can I use BIDI with Selenium?
Yes, Selenium fully supports BIDI already. Yes.
Great news. Okay. Does it have any difference in syntaxes between classic WebDriver and WebDriver BIDI?
Yeah. So this is the main thing. WebDriver BIDI team has made like they have taken measures like the WebDriver BIDI implementation does not affect any WebDriver Classic implementation. The users has they can use WebDriver Classic as they are using regularly, and if you are there will be no syntax changes and anything. Only you need to understand how WebDriver BIDI works and the WebDriver BIDI methods. That's it.
Yeah, that's about backward compatibility with previous tests. That's a great news, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, you talked only about advantages, but what is about disadvantages of this tool? Can you mention some of them?
So only disadvantage I can say it is still not yet ready. The WebDriver team is BIDI team is working hard to bring it to the automation industry. They have been working for more than 2 years, and the Safari team is lagging behind. And yeah, I can say this is only the disadvantage for now.
Great. Okay, let me check. Do we have any other question? I don't think. I see one more.
Mhm.
What performance are required for one open tab or window?
Come again, Andre. What?
What performance are
Mhm.
required for one open tab or window?
What? I didn't quite get that question.
I'm, I'm sure, yeah, also probably it is mean about using the memory during using new WebDriver BIDI because it has
Mhm.
a complex solution using HTTP requests both with the WebSockets and probably it will take
Yes.
more memory than WebDriver
Okay.
Classic.
So yeah. So it is it is fast I can say because WebDriver BiDi communicates bidirectionally and it is designed from the browser vendors directly. So I don't think there will be any performance issue, but it will be fast enough to take your commands to the browser and execute them.
Okay, great. I see one more question. Wait a bit until it will be added to our screen. Yes, thank you. Is there a BiDi implementation for Appium or Appium version 2.0?
No, not yet. So WebDriver BiDi is still only with the Selenium and WebDriver IO. So as it is a standard specification is complete, then maybe APM team can implement it. But there is a chance, the WebDriver IO tool is a combination of multiple packages internally that it is using you can also use APM with WebDriver IO, right? So there is a chance like you can tweak few internals and use WebDriver BiDi and APM with WebDriver IO.
Great. Next question. Is parallel execution and rerun is supported and maybe even visual testing?
So the main goal of WebDriver BiDi is to have the DevTools access to the WebDriver Classic. So I don't see it is for the visual, I don't see the future for visual testing, I can say for now. But maybe in the future, if that is required, then we can consider. And coming to the parallel execution, yes, with the Selenium grid, we are already supporting the WebDriver BiDi.
Great. Anything else? I don't see any new question, but I see a great presentation. But unfortunately, Safari is last on the list to implement by the protocol. Yeah, pretty the same observation we have. Yeah, next question. Selenium 4 supports CDP with the Chrome DevTools feature. What values does BD add on the top of this feature?
So it's more simple. CDP actually stands for Chrome DevTools Protocol. So we are only supporting for the Chromium-based browsers. So the main thing is we want WebDriver BiDi to support for all browsers with Edge, Chromium, Firefox, Chrome, and Safari too. And second thing is Selenium 4 CDP is implemented in such a way it opens the WebSocket connection, but there is a unidirectional communication, and it is the CDP is more limited in the Selenium 4 if you see.
Okay, great. I see that our attendees start sharing useful links in the chat. That's great. So I was right that thinking about a lot of attendees start googling what is that. Okay, do we have any questions, guys? Don't hesitate. Not yet. Okay. Uh, I think that if you have any question, you can address it on via community page in offline mode, and we will share all questions with Harsha, and I'm pretty sure that he will answer all of them. And on that fine note, I would like to conclude our meeting. Thank you to everyone who was joining us today, who joined us today the first time, and for those who continue to stay with us all this time. Many thanks to our speakers and our moderator, without whom this event would not have taken place. Don't forget to subscribe to us on our social networks, follow the updates, and stay in touch. And if you like this event, press thumbs ups and helps us to share this video for the wider auditory. Have a nice day for everyone, and see you soon on the next Pro Quality events. Bye.
Bye. Thank you all.